Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of KLINGSPOR's Tech Talk. I'm Luke Dombrowski with...
And I'm Landon Eisenhower.
Okay, we're here with KLINGSPOR Abrasives. We're here to go over we're going to get into metalworking a little bit this episode. More specifically, we're going to talk about some SMTs that have to do with metalworking. And then later on in the show, like always, we're going to answer some questions about your applications and the best products that we offer for you. But again, we like to remind you several times throughout the episode, if you have questions while you're watching or later on in the week or anytime you have questions, please send them in to TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com. And to get started, I'm going to turn it over to Landon. Landon, let's talk some SMTs.
Well, let's talk. So as Luke said, the first thing we're going to discuss is the KLINGSPOR Flap Discs, also known here as SMTs. So if you're a current customer or you're someone who is new to the metalworking industry, we're going to kind of give you an inside look at some of the flap discs and some of the ones to use for any application you might have at the house. So what exactly is an SMT? So what it is, it's basically little square flaps of sandpaper. And it's always going to be a polyester, very stiff, aggressive backing. So it's important to know you'll never see flexible or J-flex backing on a flap disc. So these are made purely for aggression. So it's always going to be a polyester, which Luke will get into here in a little bit. And basically they're just glued in a radius fashion onto a backing. And we'll discuss the backings more here in just a little bit. But yeah, it's just little square flaps of sandpaper glued in a radius fashion on a backing. Some applications you may run into. So the majority of the time it's going to be for heavy stock removal. So these will be your lower grits, 24 anywhere to 60. But you can also get into some of your higher grits like 80 and 120 grit. And that's going to be more for your blending, finishing. You can remove scale and rust, things like that as well. So pretty much any metal fab shop that you see, they're either using flap discs or something that has the same application like a grinding disc or something like that. So between the two, any metal fab shop will probably have an application for a flap disc. So moving on, we have two main grains these flap discs are made with. The first one is going to be what we call the alumina zirconia. As you can see, it's typically a bluish color. And out in the field or across the market, you'll probably notice the zirconia is a little bit more common than any other grain. So you just get a little more bang for your buck, and it's just the most common one you'll see. And again, that's the alumina zirconia. So going on, what they call a more premium version is going to be ceramic aluminum oxide.
Gotcha.
Okay, so generally you get a little more aggression and more longevity out of this disc. So it's seen as the premium option as far as flap discs, even belts, any kind of sandpaper in general. It's just a premium grain. You get a little more aggression and longevity out of it.
We've talked about this before in earlier episodes. We've talked about the four main grains that we use with all of our coated abrasives. And earlier we were probably talking about some hardwoods and softwoods with aluminum oxide, but now is when we can dive into aluminum zirconia and ceramic, because their main focus is with metalworking. And this is where they show, this is where they shine. This is their place to shine because of two main things, is the hardness of the grain and their longevity. So you can really go to town and be very aggressive with them, and they will last. And that's why they show their face the most time when we're talking metalworking. So you know, there are instances, I guess, for any kind of grain to be used in woodworking, but we are talking metal, and we talk metal, you're usually talking aluminum zirconia and ceramic aluminum oxide. We do, I think, have one that's offered with aluminum oxide. Tell us about the aluminum oxide flap disc.
So we call it the SMT 314, and it is the lone flap disc that is made from the aluminum oxide grain. So generally you can use it on some non-ferrous metals, whether it's aluminum, brass, anything soft metals like that. Another application, you can run into a random wood application. Whether you're making bowls or trying to get that rounded shape started, that would be a good choice. Anything on wood, although it's kind of rare, you do come across it from time to time. So that would be the SMT 314.
Gotcha. Now when we talk about coated abrasives, we always talk about the backings. I think SMTs have the same variation of backings. Tell us more about the backings.
Correct. So moving on to the backings, we have three main types here at KLINGSPOR. The first is going to be just a standard plastic backing. In the industry, it's seen as the most economical price point option, I guess you could say. The reason for that is it just generates a little more heat than the other ones we'll get to. So with an abrasive, anytime you can keep the temperature down, you'll get a little bit more longevity out of that disc. So a general rule is if the abrasive gets hotter, it's going to burn up a little quicker. So that is one of the reasons it is seen as the economical choice just here. Another reason, it's a little less aggressive. Since it is just a standard plastic backing, that heat buildup doesn't allow you to quite push into the workpiece like some of these other options will. So you can't be quite as aggressive. Another reason why it's lesser on the scale here. And lastly, it creates a little bit more vibration. So whenever, I guess you can say it's not as user-friendly as some of these other options. So as you're grinding with it, you will notice a little bit more of, I don't want to say a bounce, but you will move a little bit more. So it won't leave quite as smooth of a finish or grinding area, but you'll just notice it's not quite as user-friendly.
Gotcha.
And so moving on to the second type, it's by far the most common you'll see also. Pretty much every shop has some of these in it, and it's going to be your fiberglass backing. So it is seen as a premium version. You can do all the things we just discussed. It basically is the complete opposite. So you can be a little more aggressive with it. And the main reason for that is because it just doesn't generate the same heat. So that fiberglass it tends to dissipate the heat a little better. So again, it stays cooler, which is going to do what? It's going to make your abrasive last a little bit longer. So with that, you get more bang for your buck as far as flat disc goes. And lastly, it creates much less vibration. And you'll notice that right out of the gate, it's much more user-friendly. It just glides across the workpiece. And it just leaves a much better finish, and it won't scratch up the workpiece quite as much, if you will. And lastly, which is kind of a new product line for us here, we call it the trimmable plastic, but as for a part number, we call it the SMT Titan series. And so basically what I mean by trimmable backing is when you're using these flat discs, you're supposed to use them at an angle. So when you're using them at an angle, most people just kind of rough up the edge here. You're not going to be able to get all the way to the center. So when able to do that, what you do with these discs is you grind the top. And so when you grind the top, the overall disc gets smaller. And what does that allow you to do? It's going to allow you to get all the way to the center of the disc. You're able to use all the sandpaper on the disc, and you just get much more life out of the disc as a whole.
Oh man, I mean, we've heard great things about that from the field. We've tested it that's a winner right there if I've ever seen. Well, all of KLINGSPOR products are winners. You know, we don't deal with losers around here. Right. Losers go, you know, it's all winner. That's a great product right there. But we've got I think we've got a video that goes into a little more depth about the backing.
Correct. So it'll give you a little bit more of a visual, so you can see all three. You'll get to see them in use. So we're good.
Let's go to the videotape.
In 1971, KLINGSPOR introduced the first flap disc. This was an innovation that eventually became an industry staple. Flap discs are one of the most popular products, and over the past years we have developed a variety of different discs for different applications. Some of the differences are easy to spot, such as size and form. Others are less obvious, but equally important to reach the desired sanding result. The two main components of a flap disc are the backing and the abrasive flaps. In today's video, we are going to talk about the different types of backings you will see on KLINGSPOR SMTs and the advantages and benefits of each. The first and most often used backing is made from reinforced glass fiber. Glass fiber backings are very strong, durable, and lightweight, which makes them the most popular choice. Due to their lightweight nature, the glass fiber absorbs vibration very well and helps dissipate heat, leading to a smoother, cooler cut. Anytime an abrasive can run cooler, the longevity of the disc will be increased. Another flap disc backing offered at KLINGSPOR is our standard plastic backing. The glass reinforced nylon plastic used offers conformability while being firm and aggressive. By reducing the amount of vibration and their degree of flexibility, these are great for uneven and contoured surfaces. Plastic backings are also becoming increasingly popular due to their economical price points. Lastly, we offer a trimmable plastic backing with a built-in 5/8 center for easy mounting with no tools. Not to be confused with standard plastic backings, these discs can be trimmed up to 3/8 of an inch from the outer edge of the disc to allow for the complete use of the abrasive flaps. These trimmable backings will always be marked as such on the front of the disc. These discs offer a tough, rigid backing that is great in all aggressive applications. This backing is also unique in that it offers a vented area around the arbor, which allows air to pass through during use, maintaining a cooling running temperature. This type of backing presents KLINGSPOR's most aggressive and longest lasting flap disc to date. As you can see, each backing has its own list of advantages, and the right choice always depends on what you are trying to accomplish. If you feel unsure which SMT is the correct one for you, just contact your KLINGSPOR sales representative or our technical department.
Got a lot of good information right there in that video about the backings. Now, the other thing that differentiates our SMTs from each other are the different types of angles that they come in. Could you go into some depth about this, Landon?
Correct. So it's a slight difference, but it does make a huge difference on whatever application you might need. So you need to plan accordingly for that. So we offer 3 different angles. The first of which is going to be a 12 degree. It's the steepest we offer here at KLINGSPOR. So a general rule with the flap discs is the steeper the angle of the flaps, the more aggressive it's going to be.
Okay.
And so the reason for that is when you're grinding, it hones in on a more narrow grinding area. So 12 degree is specifically for just narrow welds and being as aggressive as possible, just being efficient as possible. Okay. Also, any angled disc is going to be better for contours and just getting in hard to reach areas. So you couldn't do that with a flat or a lesser angle. So
absolutely.
So 12 degree will be our first one. Our next will be our flap disc, which this one happens to be. So it's a little different. So 12 degree is the most aggressive. I don't say least aggressive, but in a way it's true, will be the flat. Reason being is its grinding area is much wider. So you're not honing in on a specific little weld, you're gonna remove the weld and then some wider, if that makes sense. So it specializes in grinding in large flat areas. So like removing rust or scale off a door or the hood of a car, just something where you need to be more efficient on a large flat surface. Also, if you're blending two places together where a weld was, a flap disc will work really good as well.
Gotcha.
And so the third one, third and final, which is the happy medium between the two, will be the 6 degree angle. And it tends to be the more common option just because you get the best of both worlds here. So you're going to get the aggression of the angled flap disc, and you're also going to have a little wider grinding area, so you're going to be more efficient in areas where it flattens and you're not removing welds or things like that. Gotcha. So those are the 3 angles. So you do want to plan accordingly. And by that I mean if you are removing scale off a big 12 by 12 plate, you probably don't want to use a 12 degree angle. You could use a flat one and you could cut your grinding time probably in half at least. So just something to look out for there.
Little bit right there makes a big difference.
It does, makes a huge difference. And so kind of on a related topic, depending on the angle of the flaps is going to change how you're supposed to use the flap disc as well. So again, if you have any angled flap disc, whether it's a 6 degree or even a 12 degree, you're supposed to use these at about a 30 to 35 degree angle. So any steeper or any more flat at a lesser angle, you're not going to be using the abrasive as intended. So you're going to lose aggression. It's just not going to work like it's supposed to be. So to maintain efficiency here, you do just want to use about 30 to 35 degree angle.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, if you're using a flat flap disc, which we have here, since it's generally for polishing and blending, you want to widen out that grinding area so you can drop that grinding area or grinding angle down to about 15 degrees. So again, you can flatten the flat disc, tongue twister there. You can flatten it out a little bit, and it's going to be much more efficient if you choose it for the right application. So just something to look out for there as well.
Gotcha. Now, if you go through our product line and you're looking at some of these SMTs, you might notice that some of them are green. Now, this is our green SMTs mean that they're lubricated. Now, I can't go and say that all of our coated abrasives that are green are lubricated because this isn't green. Right. We talked before about our Green Tech, our PS77 and our FP77 line. Those are not lubricated, but all cloth back coated abrasives that are green that are offered through KLINGSPOR are lubricated. So what does that mean? Our lubricated coated abrasives do one thing. one thing very well is they reduce heat by about 20%.
Correct.
Landon mentioned earlier, when you're using this and you're being very aggressive, and we're doing this on metal, so metal is generating a lot of heat. The first thing that heat does, which is heat is the biggest enemy to all of our coated abrasives. What heat does is it breaks down the bond, it breaks down the grains, and it basically just tries to destroy our coated abrasives before we finish a job. So a lubricated coated abrasive is going to reduce that heat, which will in turn make it last longer. But everybody's like, oh, that's fantastic. Why doesn't everything that we use in metal require just to have a lubrication on it?
There you go.
There's a tongue twister for you. But no, we don't do that because the trade-off for this 20% reduction in heat is a reduction in aggression. So sometimes you don't want to be, you want to be that aggressive. You don't worry that too much about the heat. But again, this heat comes in handy, the reduction in heat, when we're dealing with two main materials, mostly stainless steel and aluminum.
Yes.
They are very heat sensitive. So it's something that we call it blues it. It burns it a little bit when we're too aggressive and we generate too much heat. So what exactly are our SMTs that are lubricated, that are green?
Perfect. So with stainless steel, we said it blues it over. You want to prevent that at all costs because that's just going to add an extra step into whatever process you have going on. So the SMT from KLINGSPOR that you're going to want to recommend or use is the SMT 996.
Gotcha.
And so what it is, it's the ceramic that we talked about earlier, just with the lubricant on the top. So you're going to still get the premium grain on that harder stainless shell. So it's going to be more efficient and it's going to keep that temperature down a little bit. So it's the SMT 996.
There we go. The we got the lubricated ones. What else can we talk about with SMTs? I think we've gotten there.
Do soft metals.
Softer metals.
Aluminum. Yeah.
The aluminum. We talked about using lubrication on aluminums. Why do you want to be careful around aluminum?
Right. So on soft metals, they don't blue over, but when they get hot, they tend to get a little tacky and sticky. Okay. And so what that'll do, it'll stick to the abrasive grain.
Oh.
And then basically you're just spinning your wheels, not removing any metal. So to prevent that from happening, you want a little bit softer of a grit with that same lubricant on top. So from KLINGSPOR standpoint, that's going to be the SMT 636. So instead of the ceramic, the 636 is a zirconia grain, the alumina zirconia, and it has that same lubricant on top. And so the reason you want that on softer metals like brass, nickel, aluminum, whatever the case may be, it breaks down a little bit better. So if you use too hard of a grain, like ceramic on a soft metal, that sandpaper will never break down and it's going to glaze over anyway. So with aluminum, you probably want to stick with the zirconias, but
there we go.
You know.
So, I think we need to jump into some questions, right?
Yeah.
Do we have some questions? We had one question from last week that I think Jeff, if you're still out there watching this today, thank you for your questions. This question from Jeff. What do you guys offer for rust removal, but not metal removal for underneath? We currently use a very cheap dipped woven wheels, but they don't last very long. Would be nice to find something more durable. Landon?
Perfect.
What
So
do we got?
if you're just trying to remove a top coat like rust or paint, any kind of contaminant, we have the perfect item. It's called the NCD 200. And so basically what it is, it's just a compressed nylon fiber.
Okay.
And it has a silicon carbide grain in it. So it's like a very open coat. It looks like a sponge essentially. And it's a very open coat, meaning when you remove this rust in paint, it's not going to get clogged up into the disc. So you're going to use it. It's going to remove the top coat very efficiently. You don't need to apply a ton of pressure. And then it's got the silicon carbide grain in it, so it leaves a nice finish without actually doing much scratching to the actual workpiece below it.
Okay.
So again, I would go with the NCD 200, Jeff.
NCD 200. Gotcha.
So we have another question in from Stefan, and he's wanting to know what is the difference between a sterate and a multi-bond lubricant, Luke?
Okay, well, we talked about a multi-bond lubricant earlier, the heat reduction. Very good with those heat-sensitive metals, stainless steel and aluminum. Multi-bond lubricants are great for metalworking. So what do we need to use in the woodworking field? You know, you're not going to need to use a lubricant on wood. just doesn't happen that way. A stair rate is what we offer. It's an additive that we offer on some of our coated abrasives. Where lubricants keep the temperature down, stair rates help fight loading. So what you're talking about with that NCD 200 when it just coats on there, that Power Wheels when it just coats on there. Same thing happens when you're sanding soft or gummy materials like soft woods or something like that. So we offer a stair rate in some of our coated abrasives where it will reduce that clogging, where it will reveal more of that grain so you can keep your aggression and keep going. So in the world of coated abrasives, stair rates, more for wood, lubricants, more for metals. It's an easy separation right there. We got a question in here from Josh. Josh writes, what RPM are your flap discs supposed to be run at?
Okay, so most of them are rated just over 13,000, but that's going to be just fine because most of the angle grinders, if they're not variable speed especially, so just your regular DeWalt will be it runs at 10 to 12,000 RPMs, so any of these flap discs will be well within that, so not to worry there. So 10 to 12,000. The only time I would say to look out for that is if you have a full non-woven wheel. We make these in full non-woven, which we refer to as the SMT 800. Since it's more for polishing and less removal, you would like to slow that down at least to 6,000, maybe even lower than that. So if it's full non-woven or for polishing purposes, you want to slow those grinders down if possible.
Could you use more of like a buffer per se? Is that more used for a buffer?
Perfect, especially especially in a very fine or medium non-woven, you could get, I think most buffers run from 2 to 4,000 roughly, depending on which one you see. So
they look like angle grinders.
They do.
Some people can get confused sometimes, but that is good to look at your machinery before you go out there to start using things like that. RPM should be written clearly on your machines, but.
Right, and the next question in from Fernando, why would I ever need a cloth-backed abrasive instead of a paper-backed disc?
Okay, gotcha. Well, this comes in, this happens a little bit with metalworking, but it can happen with wood or metal, kind of across the spectrum right here. Cloth-backed discs are stronger, in essence. A really short answer for that, paper-backed discs and cloth discs last longer. So a paperback discs are great for flat surfaces.
Oh yeah.
You put them on a random orbital sander, put them on flat surfaces, go forever. Once you start using some of this edge work like that, that's where you run into trouble. A lot of people that work in doors or countertops, things like that. Once you start doing edge work, you're going to start putting undue pressure on those discs, on those coated abrasives, belts, and everything. But a cloth back disc can handle some of that aggression, they'll stay together longer, and it's just stronger. Now, that's it. You use a cloth back disc when aggression is going to be used, and you need that strength.
So which one would leave me the better finish between those two? If I was
paper usually leaves a better finish.
Okay.
But when you get to those finishing stages of the sanding process, we're not going to be that aggressive. So there's when paper comes in. If you've got wide belt machines, when you get past that 150, that's when paper belts come into play, and you're getting that better finish. But
makes sense.
Not as much aggression.
There you go.
If you need to be aggressive, you need something strong. We've got another one here from Jackson. Jackson writes, do all of your flap discs have to be locked in with a locking nut?
Do they all have to be locked in? Okay. So no, not all of them. So I'll say any of our discs that have a 7/8 arbor hole, those do need to be locked in. They don't need a backing plate or anything like that because, as we said, they have the built-in backing. Okay. But if it has a 7/8 hole, you will have to lock it into the grinder. And they're called locking nuts. We sell those separately. I know those get lost a lot around every shop just about. So on the other hand, we do have a plenty of them that has a 5/8 hub on it, which means you just screw it right onto the grinder. Ooh, yeah. No locking or tools necessary. You just spin it on and you're ready to go. And also, this is the SMT Titan. They all have the 5/8 and we also offer it with the SMT 940. Okay. It's not trimmable, but it does have that built-in 5/8 hub. So a lot of people don't want to deal with locking them in. They like the quick change aspect. So that's a good way to go, the SMT Titan or the 940. There we go. Okay, and another question from Ginger. I have a sander that has holes in the backing pad. Do I have to use discs that have the same hole pattern?
Ginger, thank you for that question. This is a very common question, and it was so common we made a video about it to answer this question. Let's go to the videotape. take it. Oh, hey, how's it going there? You snuck up on me. I was just getting some sanding done with the vacuum on. Quite loud. But that vacuum helps keep all this dust and debris out of the workshop and most importantly, out of my lungs. Do you know why discs have holes in them? Coated abrasive discs have holes in them for sanders that use vacuums or self-generated vacuums. It allows air to be drawn through there. It removes all the dust and debris from the workpiece and isolates it. And again, it keeps it out of our bodies. Safety is always first here at KLINGSPOR. Every sander out there on the market that has some type of dust extraction system has its own unique hole pattern and backing pad to go along with it. The great news is here at KLINGSPOR, you can get our high quality and high performance paper punched into any kind of hole pattern that fits your sander. This includes both PSA and hook and loop, which is the same price here at KLINGSPOR. To help further with dust extraction, I'm using a Dynabrade downdraft table and vacuum system. KLINGSPOR and Dynabrade have been partners for years, so you can use our high quality coated abrasives on their high performance tools. To get more information about dust extraction or hole patterns on coated abrasives, contact KLINGSPOR today. Another video just jam-packed with information. Our last question, we got it in here from Joe. Joe, thank you for watching again. Joe says, I use a lot of grinding discs.
Okay.
Should I switch to an SMT? Your thoughts?
So a lot of it's going to be personal preference, but me personally, they're used for the exact same applications. They're going to be for heavy stock removal. I would choose an SMT every time for a few reasons actually. So when grinding with a disc, which is actually pretty much just a stone, you're much more likely to dig into the workpiece or gouge it, and there's going to be a lot of highs and lows in that workpiece, so it's not going to leave a good flat finish, if you will. So if you compare that with an SMT, it's going to be much smoother, and it's just not going to dig down into the workpiece. So you're going to remove the weld, and then you're going to leave a nice finish behind it. So as far as being user-friendly, I would go with the SMT every single time. And another reason, I mean, you can just do much more with the SMT. So they're offered in a few different angles. So like I said, 6, 12 degree, and a flat disc. You can just do much more. So you can use flat, you can use them on contours, any kind of hard to reach area. You name it, we can do it. It's harder to do that with a grinding disc. And the same for heat sensitive metals. So you want to keep the temperature down as much as possible. It's much easier to do that with a lubricated disc than it is with a grinding stone, essentially. You just can't keep the temperature down but so much with the stone. So for those reasons, I would choose an SMT every time, and it's essentially a 2-in-1 disc. And by that I mean you're still going to get the aggression. It might not be quite as aggressive as the grinding disc, but you're still going to efficiently remove that weld. And that's the first part. The second part of the 2-in-1 is it's just going to leave a great finish behind. So most people, if you're going for a satin finish or whatever the case may be, you're going to remove that weld and you're already going to be one step ahead with a good finish right behind it. So it's a 2-in-1 disc. It's a no-brainer for me.
There we go. Absolutely. Remember, you can get all your SMTs at KLINGSPOR. Locate your local rep or give us a call. But it draws us to about at the end of our episode here. Next week with October 6th. Is going to be our next episode. That's going to be Nick talking about router bits. Router bits, huge, vast world. He's going to open up the world of router bits to us. This is both wood and metal, so whichever way he goes with it. But router bits are next. We remind you to send your questions. Keep those questions in.
Keep them coming.
Jeff, thank you again for your questions at TechTalk at KLINGSPOR.com, and thank you for watching. I'm Luke.
And I'm Landon.
Have a great day.